Good afternoon, class. My name is Mr. Z. Today we're going to be discussing the book I Was a Rat by Philip Pullman. Now, this book, written by the British author Pullman, is a twist on the Cinderella story. If you know anything about the Cinderella story, you know that it's a story of a princess and a prince falling in love. However, just the first 14 pages, which you were assigned to read, kind of introduce us to the very beginning of the story. So if you could open up your packets, we are going to go through the vocabulary and the reading comprehension, starting with the vocabulary. On the screen up here, I have a document camera with a document of the packets that we'll be going through. So follow along with me. I'll be filling in some of the answers. And let's just move right along, all right? If you have any questions at any point in time, feel free to raise your hand, ask any questions, or if I'm moving too fast, feel free to raise your hand and slow me down a little bit. But without further ado, I Was a Rat by Philip Pullman. Turning to the very first part of our packets, we're going to start with the vocabulary activities. At the very top of your packets, you can see that we have a vocabulary list. Let me adjust this and let me zoom in on it. Here is a close-up of the vocabulary list. Let's walk through each of these words with the definitions next to them. We're starting off right at the top here, cobbling, which is the act of making or repairing shoes. It's a noun. The first four words are all nouns. Remember that a noun is a person, place, or a thing. Distress, a condition of danger or desperate need. Errand, a short trip taken to do or get something, especially for somebody else. So this is like chores or things like that. Fiancé, a woman engaged to be married. Fidget is a verb, to fidget. You move or you cause or cause to move or act nervously. When you fidget, think about if you have a really big test, you're fidgeting your thumbs or you're tapping your foot because you're fidgeting because you're so nervous or anxious. You're restless. Guzzle, to drink greedily. Now, greedily means selfishly. You're only thinking about yourself. You have greed. You're drinking something like this is the very last of this liquid on earth. You are drinking water like you are extremely dehydrated or you need water. You guzzle it down. Privy is another word for bathroom or toilet. Reluctant, showing doubt or unwillingness. You may be reluctant to take a test in class because you didn't study enough the night before or the week before. Royal is the relation to a king or a queen. Royal family in England is Queen Elizabeth. So if you are royal, you are related to the king or the queen. Scourge, someone or something that is an instrument of punishment or criticism. This is a noun, a scourge. Startle is a verb, to frighten suddenly and usually not very seriously. I get startled if I hear a bang outside, or I get startled if somebody drops a book in class and I wasn't expecting it. And then tattered means torn in shreds or ragged. So those are the list of your words. Does anyone have any questions on these words before we continue to move on? This list will be very important, so if you have any questions, now is the time to ask. Make sure that you keep this. We're going to reference back to this vocabulary list often. But let's jump down to the matching definitions right here. Let's fill a couple of these out. They should go pretty quickly here. Adjust this. There we are. All right. Let's start with number one. Blank. Notice that the directions say match each of the words below with its definition based on the context in which the word appears in the book. So the very first blank means strong or very bright. Now, if you go back up to your vocab list, I don't see any definitions that fit this, so let's skip over this one for a second. Number 2, to frighten suddenly and usually not seriously. Remember, if you drop your book, you startle me. So the answer to number 2 is startle. Number 3, a woman engaged to be married. That's also on your list. Scan back up there. Remember, it is fiancé. Fiancé. With an accent over the first E. Number 4 is a condition of danger or desperate need. Look back up at your list. Do you see this word up there? It's number 2 on your vocab list. Distress. We can cross off 3 words so far. Distress, startle, fiancé, which leaves us with tattered, scourge, and vivid. Number 5, torn in shreds. Look up at your list. This is tattered, which leaves us with scourge and vivid. Scourge is going to be number 6, someone or something that is an instrument of punishment or criticism. So that leaves us with only 1 word left. That is vivid, which means very strong or bright. So we just added another word to our vocab list. That one is relatively easy, those matching definitions. So let's move on to some words in context here. Let's find some synonyms in number 2. Let's just go through a couple of these for time's sake. Let's look at number 1. In service, Bob said, that means being someone's servant, have a master or a mistress, and run errands for him. Now, if you look back at the directions, this says that we want to replace the bolded word in the following passages with a synonym that best fits the context of the sentence. Check the dictionary to make certain that the word is defined correctly for its context. So we're going to be using the actual definition of our replaced words to find out if this actually fits. So we have 4 choices for that first sentence that I just read. The word that's bolded, notice, is errands. Looking back at your vocab list, errands is a task that you do for somebody else, or a chore, remember? Our 4 options are tools, mistakes, payments, and tasks. Now let's actually replace errands in this sentence and see if it makes sense. In service, said Bob, that means being someone's servant. Have a master or a mistress and run tools for them. Run tools for them. A tool is an instrument of measurement or like a wrench or a screwdriver or something like that. Run tools for them? That doesn't really make sense. We know it's not going to be A. Have a master or a mistress and run mistakes for them. Run mistakes for them. Will a servant usually run mistakes for their master or mistress? Mistakes is something that goes wrong, and a servant usually wants to do things right. So mistakes also isn't going to be the answer. Have a master or a mistress and run payments for them. Now this makes a little bit of sense, so let's keep this one in mind. Or D, have a master or mistress and run tasks for them. Looking back at the definition of errands, remember that errands is a chore or something that you do usually for somebody else. Chores makes more sense with tasks than it does payment. Therefore, we can decide that D is going to be our answer. D, tasks. Does that make sense? I think so. Let's try this a little bit quicker this time with number 2. The boy tried to look at himself, but he was reluctant to leave the bowl. Reluctant is the bolded word. Reluctant. Now, reluctant means hesitant, or there's something that's keeping you back from doing something. I am reluctant to go for a run outside because it's so cold outside, which is true. So, A, unwilling, B, slow, C, cheerful, or D, difficult. keeping in mind that the definition of reluctant means unwilling. Unwilling is actually one of our options. So we defined reluctant already, and the synonym already exists in our options for number 2. So is it going to be A, B, C, or D? Unwilling, slow, cheerful, or difficult? Unwilling is going to be the correct answer here. Knowing the definition of reluctant fits best with unwilling. Let's move on from synonyms and go into definitions and sentences. Let's just do one of these. At the top it says, she put it in front of the boy. Without a second's pause, he put his face right down into the bowl and began to guzzle it up directly, his dirty little hands gripping the edge of the table. The directions for this section: for each highlighted word, write a sentence using each word. The bolded word in that first sentence is guzzle, and remember, if you are super thirsty, you guzzle down water. So I want you to think of a sentence that we can use guzzle in. And I kind of just gave you a hint right there. It's going to be related to the liquid because we have to drink. And we are greedily drinking it. We are drinking it like there is no tomorrow. So I think a good sentence would be, I am so thirsty that I want to guzzle the water from the lake. That's how thirsty I am. I can dip my head in the lake and guzzle in all the water. Sentence completion here at the very end, let's just do one of these as well. Directions, based on your understanding of the word's meaning, complete the sentence starters that follow. So this is pretty much what we just did with that creating our own sentence, except we already given half the sentence. We need to complete the second half. Let's look at the first one. The tattered carpet made the whole room look blank. Tattered, looking back at your definitions of words, tattered means ragged or ripped apart or torn apart. So imagine this room in here with tattered carpet. The carpet is going to be all ripped up. It's going to be torn apart. It's going to look not very nice. So let's complete the sentence now. The tattered carpet made the whole room look nice? Probably not. Imagine ripped apart carpet. It's not going to look very nice at all. So the tattered carpet made the whole room look destroyed or bad or messy or unkempt or unclean. But I'm just going to go with messy here. We just use one word to complete an entire sentence. It made the whole room look messy. Any questions on the vocabulary section of your reading? Let's move on to Reader's Workshop and discussion. Now these are going to check your understanding of the reading. You're going to have to think a little bit critically about some of these questions. Let's just answer a few of these comprehension questions. The directions at the top say, answer the questions to the best of your ability. Annotate your answer with the page numbers on which you found your answer, so make sure you have your books out as well. Use complete sentences. Let's start with number 1. Who is Prince Richard marrying, and where did he meet her? Now this is on the very, 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 very first page of your reading. Page number 1, it says the Daily Scourge right at the top. Does everyone have that? Take a look at that, the Daily Scourge. Who is Prince Richard marrying? Now if you look at page 1, let's fill that in. It says, hunky Prince Richard has found a bride at last. At midnight last night, the palace announced his engagement to His Royal Highness Prince Richard to the Lady Aurelia Ashington. Prince Richard is marrying Lady Aurelia Ashington. Where did he meet her? It's still on the same page. A few paragraphs down, now we see they met at the Midsummer's Ball. Prince Richard met the lady at the Midsummer's Ball. Excellent. You see how we did that? Referred back to the text, found the paragraphs in which the answers are provided, annotated where we found those answers, and wrote it down in complete sentences. Let's jump down to number 3 and let's answer number 3 here. Who knocks on Bob and Joan's door is the question. Bob and Joan, remember, are mentioned right at the very beginning as well. They are the cobblers. And somebody does knock on their door. So let's see if we can find where a knock appears on their door. We're introduced to Bob and Joan right at the very beginning, and just a few pages down, we see, or a few paragraphs down, excuse me, on page 3, we see one evening as Joan wrote a letter to her niece, and old Bob sat trimming at the heels of a pair of scarlet slippers he was making for the love of it, there came a knock at the door. Was that someone knocking, he said? What's the time? Now we're on page 4. And Bob opens up the door, and he says, "Bless my soul, who are you?" "I was a rat," said the little boy. And a little bit later on, we find out that they named this boy who says he is a rat. What? Roger. Roger, the boy who was a rat, knocks on Bob and Joan's door. That's on page 4, remember. See what we're doing here? We're going back into the text, finding the answers, annotating them, and answering them in complete sentences. Now let's answer one of the discussion questions, because these are really going to stretch you and make you think critically, which is a very important skill to have. So, thinking critically here, the directions say, answer the questions to the best of your ability, use 4 complete sentences now. 4 complete sentences. So these are going to be a little bit longer. And I really like question number 1, so let's answer question number 1, because it asks what your opinion is. Do you think Roger was really a rat? What about him makes you believe that what he's saying is true or not? Explain. So we have a couple things we need to answer. We need to answer if we really think Roger is a rat. And then we need to answer what makes us believe that what he's saying is true. And then we need to explain this. So we already have 3 sentences we know. If we believe he's a rat, an example of what he's saying that gives us that answer, and then explaining it. So I think we can do this in 4 sentences because we can provide a little bit more evidence as well. I'll give you my opinion. Do I think Roger was really a rat? Yes, I do think Roger was really a rat. So that's my first sentence. Yes, I think Roger is really a rat. That answers the first question. Now, what about him makes me believe that what he's saying is true or not? Well, think back to the text of all the things that Roger does that prove that he is not a normal little boy. According to the text, normal little boys eat their milk and bread with a spoon. Normal little boys say thank you. Normal little boys say sorry. Normal little boys know how to use the restroom. Normal little boys function in a very different way than what Roger is functioning. So, my example and what makes me believe that Roger is actually telling the truth when he says I was a rat, I'm going to use that first example I said. I believe Roger is a rat because he does things that are unlike normal little boys. He dumps his face into his bowl of milk and doesn't know how to use a spoon. That's what makes me believe that he is telling the truth, that he's a rat. I explained it as well in that textual evidence. But let me kind of summarize it with a last sentence. Roger's words and actions confirm he is telling the truth. Because remember, he also says, I'm a rat. How old am I? I'm only 5 weeks old. Or I'm only 3 weeks old. Let's go back to the text and see how old he actually was. Yeah, he says he has four siblings as well. And he hasn't seen them in days. All these things lead us to believe that Roger actually is a rat. These kinds of critical thinking questions will get you to stretch what you actually think about the text, get you to interact with the text, and then also find textual evidence. So it's a very important skill to have. Does anyone have any questions on the packet? If there are no other questions, I think we'll conclude right there. If you do come up with any questions and you want to ask after class, I'm always available. Or if you think of another question in the few minutes that we have here, feel free to raise your hand or come up to my desk and ask me. And I'd be more than happy to help you guys out with any questions that you have. Thank you, class. Thank you for your time.